6 people were murdered on one small farm. It happened in Germany in 1922. The place is called Hinterkaifeck. A family and their maid did the chores. They reported footsteps in the attic first. Neighbors found odd footprints in fresh snow. The tracks led toward the farm. But there were no tracks leading away. The maid quit a few days later. She said the house felt haunted. The family dismissed it and stayed anyway. A few days after, everyone was found dead. 6 bodies were discovered inside that farmhouse. Signs showed they were killed at close range. No forced entry was obvious. Investigators found food cooking on the stove. Animal feed was laid out in the barn. Who stayed behind and kept living with the bodies? Theories piled up. Intruder, family feud, revenge. Some thought a local neighbor was guilty. Others suspected someone already living in the house. The case went cold as leads dried up quickly. No one was ever convicted. Some locals still lock their doors at night. Someone killed 6 people and then stayed behind. They cooked, fed the animals, and waited. More than 100 years later, it's still unsolved. No one knows who lived there after the killings, and the attic footsteps were never explained. But the story stays with you. This is the Hinterkaifeck case, still without closure. 6 people were killed on that farm. It happened near Munich in winter of 1922. The name was Hinterkaifeck, and it feels frozen. Neighbors called it remote and oddly silent. The farm belonged to the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber was 63 years old. His wife Cecilia lived there with him. Their daughter Victoria was a widow. Victoria had 2 children who stayed too. Cecilia was 7 years old. Joseph was only 2 years old. A maid also worked and lived with them. From outside, the farm looked ordinary and small. Inside, things were different and tense. Neighbors noticed odd details over months. Footprints led up to the house, then stopped. There were unexpected meals left on the stove. A milk pail went missing and reappeared. The maid quit suddenly and left without explanation. People whispered that something felt wrong there. On a cold evening, the family did not wake. Neighbors found the house empty and quiet. The details that followed made no sense. Authorities searched and questioned everyone nearby, but the answers didn't add up. No clear motive ever emerged. Suspicions grew into old rumors. Years later, the mystery still haunts people. The farm is quiet in photographs, but the silence feels like a question. No one can make exactly what happened. Only the empty fields remember the noise, and people still whisper about the dark night.
They were investigated years before the murders. The family was already known to local authorities. Andreas Gruber was feared by his neighbors. Reports called him aggressive and controlling. Rumors spread through the village about abuse. People talked in hushed tones at markets. The worst rumor named his daughter, Victoria. Allegations said they had an incestuous relationship. Those claims were grave enough for police checks. Both Andreas and Victoria faced separate inquiries. The probes never cleared the family name, yet suspicions stuck and never went away. Investigators questioned family members more than once. Nothing felt safe on that farm anymore. The house grew quieter by day and louder with fights at night. Neighbors told stories about strange behavior there. People mentioned doors slammed late after midnight. Candlelight kept secrets that daylight could not. Newspapers picked up the whispers and pressed them fast. The family's name carried a weight in town. Children were warned to stay away. Farmers crossed the road to avoid them. Yet still, no one imagined what was coming. No one guessed March of 1922. That month would change everything. It would shatter lives and silence the farm. One set of footprints told everything. Andreas Gruber found them in fresh snow. They came from the forest. They led straight to his farmhouse door. There were no tracks leading back out. Someone had walked in and never left. He searched the whole property that afternoon. He turned over boards and lifted tarps. He found nothing, not a single clue. Then, the night started to change. He began hearing footsteps over the ceiling. They sounded slow, heavy, and deliberate. He blamed rats at first, then stopped. The sounds kept coming, always above. He climbed into the attic with a flashlight. He swung the beam over empty rafters. Nothing moved, breathed, or answered up there. The footprints still stopped at his door. There were no exit tracks and no explanation. He started locking every window and door. He slept, sitting up by the door. He kept a knife under his pillow. Neighbors began to whisper at the market. He lied and told them he was fine. But he stopped sleeping alone altogether. The farm felt watched every cold night. On the day of the murders, he remembered those prints. He would later tell police everything he saw. One key vanished overnight. It wasn't in the bowl. It wasn't on any hook. The family checked every drawer. They tore the mattress apart. No sign of it. The disappearance followed the footprints. Small prints, fresh mud. Nobody could explain them. Then they found a newspaper, stuffed behind a floorboard. The paper had a date they didn't know, and names they didn't know. The photos showed places the family never visited. The masthead meant nothing. No subscription, no delivery. Andreas said someone was watching. He kept checking windows at night. He thought someone lived on the land, maybe in the trees, maybe under the floor. The rest of the family argued. They wanted to leave. They packed bags, then they put the bags away. They decided to stay. They told themselves they were brave. They told themselves it was fine. Days later, a new maid arrived. She stepped onto gravel and smiled. She didn't know about footprints. She didn't know about the key. She didn't know about the newspaper. Nobody warned her. She locked herself into work. The attic door moved. The key was still missing. At night, something scratched at the door. No one imagined what it was. 6 people were killed at one farm in 1922. The previous maid quit months earlier and warned them. She said she heard voices late at night. She reported footsteps in empty rooms and strange sounds. No one took her seriously. They needed help, not fear. On March 31st, 1922, a new maid arrived. She was young and quiet. She kept her head down. It was her first day of work on the farm. Hours after arriving, she vanished without a trace. People searched and found nothing obvious. Neighbors remembered odd noises and later whispered about curses. The family treated the warnings as superstition and moved on. Investigators found blood and signs of a violent struggle. There was no clear suspect and no satisfying answer. The new maid would be counted among the dead. Her name faded into reports and muffled gossip. Cameras didn't exist to record what really happened that night. All that remained were testimonies and uneasy theories. The case still haunts historians and curious strangers today. Hinterkaifeck keeps its silence, and its truth stays buried. People still argue about suspects and the missing evidence. Some answers may never come. 4 family members died that night. The truth stayed buried under silence. No loud cries reached the fields. Each was called out alone. Doors opened for friendly voices. They walked toward steady. Steady. Panic would have ruined the plan. The killer wanted control, not chaos. He waited in patient darkness. A matic did the work. It made the crimes brutal and quiet. Neighbors heard little the next morning. By then, bodies lay in the barn. Investigators found no clear motive. Family secrets pointed like small arrows. Money and old grudges mattered a lot. Still, nothing fit all the clues. A child's toy held a tiny stain. Footprints stopped at the barn. Door. The lantern lay off to the side. Someone cleaned certain spots carefully. That looked like intent, not panic. The family remembered small, strange visits. A neighbor mentioned a new truck. Interviews found shaky alibis and lies. Still, no single suspect fitted everything. Years later, questions remain unanswered. The barn keeps its quiet, but people remember the way they vanished. The case teaches a cold lesson. Evil can hide behind familiar voices, and sometimes normal nights end in horror. His wife was likely killed right after. Then they believe Victoria was killed. Next came little Kazelia, the child. All three were inside the barn. Kazelia may have lived for hours. She survived after the initial attack. The murderer went into the house next. The maid was still alive when found. A 2-year-old boy named Yosef survived too. Both of them needed help immediately. Neighbors later said they heard nothing. Who could do something so cold? And why leave a child alive briefly? 6 people died in that house. A maid, a child, 4 others gone. Neighbors called the police before sunrise. Investigators found the maid in her room. 2-year-old Yosef was killed in his crib. No one heard a scream that night. 6 murders, 1 farmhouse, almost no witnesses. Then comes the part people couldn't accept. The killer didn't leave the house. He stayed inside for days and weeks. Slept on floors and ate their food. Used their clothes to blend in sometimes. Moved bodies between rooms at will. Neighbors noticed small things missing at first. A pillow, a blanket, a pair of boots. Detectives smelled cooking and fresh footsteps. They found a journal tucked in a drawer. Pages showed names, dates, and plans. Some entries read like apologies. Others were lists of routes and timings. He watched police clear each room, changed hiding spots when officers drew near. Neighbors later smelled decay by the well. Officers searched the attic and cellar thoroughly. They found fresh prints and a makeshift bed. He had been living among the dead. It became one of the strangest investigations. The town called it a house of horrors, but the worst part was how ordinary it felt. Sometimes monsters don't leave the scene. Someone was living there after the murders. Neighbors noticed small things that didn't add up. Smoke kept coming from the chimney every day. Animals were fed like their routine continued. Mail was carried inside before anyone could see it. Fresh bread disappeared from the kitchen overnight, almost always. Tiny signs piled up inside an empty house. The family was dead inside, bodies untouched for days. No obvious footsteps led away from the property. No hurried escape left a clear trail. It felt impossible to everyone nearby and involved. Detectives began to retrace every small movement. They checked schedules, locks, and the simplest traces. A theory grew darker as evidence accumulated slowly. The killer may have stayed on the farm. He may have slept in the very rooms. He may have eaten bread taken from cupboards. He may have tended animals to keep up appearances. He may have kept smoke in the chimney burning. People pictured a person living beside dead bodies. Neighbors replayed odd details late into the night. Some said they heard voices coming from the house. Others swore they'd seen the farmhouse door open, but hard proof remained scarce and painfully thin. Only the killer held the absolute truth inside. 4 bodies were found inside one barn. The news spread across town fast. Neighbors had noticed absences at church. The little girl stopped showing up at school. That finally made people worry. Several villagers decided to check the farmhouse. They walked up like they always did. All the doors were shut tight. There was no answer from inside. What they found stunned the whole country. They started with the barn first. 4 bodies stacked in a corner. All of them were covered in hay. The sight stopped everyone cold. Then they searched the house. They found the maid inside the house. She was dead, pale and still. Finally, they opened the nursery. Little Joseph lay in his crib. He did not move at all. A heavy silence filled the small room. The crime scene broke every rule. Investigators called it brutal and strange. Neighbors couldn't explain any motive. No sign of forced entry. There was no obvious sign of robbery. The family had vanished from church. Their routines had vanished too. People who knew them couldn't believe it. Rumors spread faster than answers. The police worked night and day. For days, the town held its breath. Friends kept asking the same question. Who could possibly do something like this? And why would they do it? Dozens walked through the crime scene. Police arrived quickly, but chaos had already started. This was a 1920s farm town. Photographers used flash, light cutting the night, but no one secured the house first. Neighbors walked in like it was a fair. Some even cooked meals inside the house. Bodies stayed where they had fallen. Evidence was trampled into dirt and ash. Fingerprints got smudged. Samples lost their value. Still, investigators found disturbing details. They discovered the murder weapon on the property. It had been hidden under a barn board. Marks on the handle matched local tools. The rope was the same as farm twine. Those clues suggested someone knew the place. They moved freely through the barns and fields, not a visitor passing through town. Witnesses gave mixed and shaky accounts. A neighbor remembered a familiar hat on the porch. Another said a horse left at midnight. Those small facts shaped a quiet profile. Contamination forced them to double-check everything. Forensics worked slowly, but they found enough. The case moved from chaos toward charges. Answers stayed partially locked inside the farm. Some questions would never leave that soil, but the evidence they kept tied someone close. Knowing a place can be a deadly advantage. They closed files, yet doubts remained. 6 different theories about who was targeted in that case. Arguments followed him like an ugly, constant rumor for years. People told stories about fights and reckless nights and consequences. So Andreas seemed an obvious person of interest to many. Josef was a child at the center of old fights. Some villagers whispered the boy's real father was different altogether. Rumors spread faster than facts could ever catch up properly. Detectives burned through leads and dead ends alike every week. Pieces of evidence fit, but the rest just didn't either. The village's past seemed louder than the present facts now. In the end, no theory explained everything cleanly or finally. So the case stayed unresolved, heavy and quietly dangerous still. Dozens of suspects filled thick police case files. Former lovers kept coming up in witness statements. Neighbors gave quiet interviews late at night. Travelers who passed through town turned into suspects. He started drinking alone and stopped answering phones, but proof barely existed for any accusation. Fingerprints matched nothing, and DNA offered no clear leads. Some leads died with suspects. Others vanished when witnesses moved away. Investigators kept finding new questions, fewer answers. Files went missing or faded with time. Rumors piled up faster than facts. 3 clues changed the way police thought. People still talk about this theory today. They claim the killer lived quietly in the attic. He wasn't outside, he was inside the house. That explains footsteps heard above bedrooms at night. It explains the missing key too. It explains the folded newspaper on the stairs. Neighbors reported odd sounds late every single night. People said they felt watched and couldn't sleep. Investigators worked quietly and followed a strange theory. He studied the family, learned their daily routines. Maybe he watched for days or even weeks. Imagine footsteps across the ceiling above your bed. You roll over in bed, thinking it's the roof. The idea makes your skin crawl at once. No broken locks, no forced windows, no clear sign. A smudge on a curtain, a lone boot print. They found hidden food wrappers and loose fibers. He slept when they slept, woke when they woke. That closeness is the worst part for many people. Your house can feel unsafe if someone lives inside. You never saw the danger standing in front. You kissed your family goodnight while someone watched. No monster lurked outside. The danger was inside. Others couldn't explain the prints and the key. Either way, the idea still haunts that neighborhood. If you live there, you'd never sleep the same. That's the attic theory people whisper about tonight. 6 people were killed on one farm. No trial followed. Despite massive investigations, the case stayed cold for decades. Forensics in 1922 were basically guesswork. Fingerprinting existed, but was limited in scope. There was no DNA, no blood profiling. The scene was messed up right away. Neighbors, police, and curious locals went through it. That contamination erased tiny clues forever. Important witnesses died before anything concluded. Some gave conflicting stories, others vanished entirely. Over decades, investigators reopened the file repeatedly. Every promising lead ran dry eventually. Clues went cold, records burned, and key papers disappeared. Suspects died or left town quietly. There was no modern forensics to reopen things. Every time someone thought they had proof, it failed. Families kept secrets for decades, and silence protected them. The truth left with the dead. So, the Hinterkaifeck murders stayed unsolved. We still have questions and no answers. History keeps nudging us, but stays frustratingly vague. Records were poorly kept and often lost. Paper rotted, lists vanished, evidence went missing. Investigators chased rumors more than facts sometimes. New theories popped up each time, but none survived scrutiny or stood up. Historians still argue about basic details today. Every reopened file added more confusion than clarity. Even modern reviews hit dead ends. Sometimes truth just isn't reachable anymore. This case still gets reopened today. Students dig through the archives like detectives. Criminologists argue over tiny details in reports. True crime researchers chase every lead they find. Some think the killer lived inside the family. Others swear it was a drifter passing through. Another group insists on an unstable outsider. In 2007, German police reopened the files. They used new lab techniques and computer analysis. Forensics has come a long way since then. Investigators named a likely suspect in private, but the name never reached the public. The suspect was already dead by then. That made any trial impossible to hold. Evidence still fell short of proof. Traces matched, but doubts stayed stubbornly alive. Some experts argue confirmation bias crept in. Others say the science simply wasn't conclusive. Still, the case forces us to ask hard questions. Who protects the vulnerable in cold cases? Who deserves answers after so many years? People keep looking because the victims deserve closure. Closure can be messy and incomplete, but that won't stop the search. New teams will look again next year, and someone might finally find the missing piece. Until then, questions keep coming. No arrest solved the mystery completely. Rumors filled letters and late-night talks. The site became empty, then normal. Children still dared each other there. 6 people were killed on one farm. The place was called Hinterkaifeck. No clear motive ever fully surfaced. What chills people most isn't the blood. It's that the family might have known. Footprints appeared in the fresh snow. Doors were found open for no reason. Keys went missing from inside the house. Neighbors heard strange noises at night. Someone reported footsteps on the roof. Voices were heard, but no one seen. Imagine living with that fear daily. Someone was watching them for days, maybe listening through walls at night. They slept under a constant weight. When the slaughter finally happened, escape vanished. There was nowhere for them to run. No safe room and no sudden rescuer. The killer may have lived inside. They could have shared meals with their murderer. Trust died before the bodies were found. Investigators found footprints leading away and back. No one could explain that movement. Speculation turned into long, ugly rumors. Still, one truth remains brutal and simple. People were killed while hope slowly vanished. And knowing someone watched them makes it worse. You sleep differently after learning that. Every creek becomes a possible visit. That's why Hinterkaifeck still chills people. Because the real horror was proximity. Not just brutality, but betrayal inside home. And that idea won't leave you. 100 years passed with no arrests. This is the Hinterkaifeck case, still unsolved. There was no confession after the killings. No one ever proved who did it. All we have are theories and speculation. A small farm stood empty for decades. Neighbors talked, and papers published wild ideas. Curses and servants and strangers all blamed. Some suspected a jealous ex, others blamed strangers. Someone thought the killer was one of them. Others argued it was a stranger passing through. No evidence ever fully backed any claim. Bones and blood were part of the reports, but records were messy and statements changed. People started telling tales to stay alive. Fear breeds stories, and stories replace facts. Maybe the truth died with one killer. Maybe multiple people covered for each other. Maybe it was a thief who snapped. Maybe the family knew their attacker. Maybe someone carried the secret to their grave. Whatever happened, silence followed for generations. Today, the field sits empty and quiet. Fog rolls across the grass at night. You can feel how old pain lingers. I don't know what really happened, but I do know people still ask. So tell me your theory in the comments. Subscribe to the Hidden Archives for more mysteries.